Wait, I just Googled it. I Googled it.
Is it on?
It's live. We can talk about it.
You
We
can
can
talk
talk
about it.
about it. We can talk about it. I just had, I mean, this is the first time I get to say this out loud. I just linked it in the chat if you want to be able to see it, but I've just published my first essay with Oprah Daily. It is live right now. Oh my God.
This ain't your average healing chat. It's healing through conversations with me, Loveli Brown. Real talk, deep healing, zero fluff.
Hey guys, this is Lovely with Lovely Esteem, and welcome back to the Healing Through Conversations podcast. We're doing take two. I know I sent a little video out, was like, and we're recording. Well, we're recording again because we were destined to talk to each other again. I feel like me and Dr. Lisette, we vibed so much last time that the universe said, do it again. And we're here. And we're here. So I want us to just take a moment, take a deep breath, and really take in all of the beautiful information that we're going to share between each other, because sometimes you make great acquaintances and then you have like some sisterly moments where you just build in community. And I love that both of us are on this path of building community for people who are looking to ascend higher and level up in their mental health, but also within their community. So today I am honored to sit with someone who is not only a clinical expert and brilliant voice in mental health, but also a trailblazing Latina leader who is redefining what it means to lead authentically. Dr. Lisette is a Latina psychologist, better than last time, keynote speaker, and the founder of Calathea Wellness. She helps professionals unlearn internalized pressures and reconnect with their cultural strengths so they can lead with confidence, self-trust, and unapologetic presence. She's also doing something that I am so excited about. She is really focusing on becoming such a wonderful keynote speaker for our generation and really helping first gens understand just how important they are to our news story. So thank you so much, Dr. Lisette Sanchez, for coming in. I'm so grateful that you're doing this again.
I am so happy to be here. Honestly, I woke up and I'm like, the best way to get my Monday started. I'm on West Coast time, so it's earlier for me. So I'm like, best way to get started is I got a workout in, and next I get to chat with Lovely. It's a little chat.
It's so great. So when do you think you really started to focus on changing the generational threads that no, I don't want to say that. I want to take that out. Okay, because that's not the question I really want to ask. What I want to ask is, what made you as a first gen decide that you wanted to become a psychologist and change the trajectory of your family's history?
Oh, that is a really good question. So something I want to say about my identity. So I'm first gen. So for me, first gen is when you are the first person in your family to navigate some new experience. That might be people who are immigrating. So my parents are first gen immigrants. My mom is from El Salvador, my dad is from Mexico, and they came to the US, first gen immigrants. So when we think of immigrant status, I'm second gen, but I'm the first gen in my family to be born here in the United States. So then I had a lot of experiences growing up where I'm navigating the world that I'm experiencing when I leave my home, and then the world that I have at home, which was very much infused and enriched with my cultural values, the Latina cultural values, Salvadorian sayings, food, and smells. I think all of it. I was like, all of it. And sorry, when I think of smells, like I think of my home. For anyone who's ever like visited a family who like loves making salsa, you go into that home and they're roasting chiles. It kind of burns your eyes, but in a good way. You're like, oh, this is gonna be a real good salsa. So that was the smell of my home growing up. So the windows and the doors were always open so that you could breathe. So, but anyway, so just join me on that journey, right? So here I am, a little girl, firstborn, and realizing that I'm constantly translating for my parents. There's lots that I have to do for them, so much constantly. And now looking back, I understand the term for that, and it's parentification. So I was placed in a role of an adult as a child where I had to help them navigate things. Now, as a child, of course, there was a lot of moments of frustration around that because I was a child. I just wanted to play. I just wanted to be a kid. But I had to help my paperwork. I had to, like make phone calls for them, go to their doctor's appointments, whatever it might be. And for some point in my life, I would look at these experiences with a lot of resentment. And then I had an aha moment around what a gift it was to be able to be this bridge for my family. Like, I have the privilege of growing up in a space where I could learn both languages, experience all the different cultures. And that was my gift from my ancestors, but also the gift that I get to give to my family is to serve as that bridge, right? So that shifted my mindset. But then I looked around and I realized, like, the mindset I had before of resentment, of frustrations, that's the mindset that most first gens carry with them. This, like, I didn't get to do what I wanted to do because I had to do this. And so that was one of my motivating factors for wanting to just specialize in first gen, work with the first gen community, because the issue is when we're looking at any experience negatively, we're not seeing any of the strengths of that experience. We're just looking at, I didn't get to do this, I didn't get to do that, like I should have gotten this, but we're not looking at, you know what I learned very young? I learned how to advocate for myself. I learned how to be resilient, how to adapt, how to be resourceful. And all of these skills are transferable to anything you do in your life, whether it's you're having a hard day, or you're in a corporate leadership role. And actually, I will say, especially if you're in any kind of leadership role, all of these skills apply because you learn how to communicate and you learn how to understand nuance in a very different way because you had to, yes. But we focus on the confidence that it took to do all of these trailblazing, instead of maybe what we didn't get to have. Because what we don't get to have, we get to create that for ourselves now, right? So that was part of my inspiration. The other part, I think, was I'm a psychologist, right? So I think the other part was looking around me and being really curious about the people around me, curious about when we had mental health challenges, people would talk about nervios, which means like nerves. We talk about somatic symptoms, like my head hurts, my stomach hurts, and I would see that all around me. And I was just curious, like, well, what makes us actually feel that way? And realizing, like, well, the reason we have so much stigma is, one, like, there's a belief that to go to therapy, you have to be in crisis or crazy. But the reality is that it's also scary to go seek support in systems where you do not see yourself represented. I don't want to go to this person who I now have to explain everything about me and the problems that I'm having.
In
right?
my culture.
And
like pull them in.
Yeah, I have to explain. So when I say, oh, I'm an adult living at home with my parents, they might say, oh, you need to individualize, you need to separate from that. But it's like, no, but it's culturally appropriate for me to live with my parents. I want to, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
So then in my mind, the trailblazer spirit that I had was like, well, I want to be that representation. Like, I want to help change how we look at a system. We see it as inaccessible because there's no one there that looks like us. So let's make it accessible. And remember, talk about the first gen identity. Yeah. I had the confidence and I trusted. Maybe I didn't see it as confidence fully in that moment, but I knew that I had a greater purpose and I had to try. So I had no idea what I needed to be a psychologist. Let me be clear. Anyone listening to this, one step at a time. I graduated high school, applied to colleges, applied to the 6 colleges that I had to apply for free to the California grants because I'm in California. Just picked randomly, just was like, and chose my major as psychology. And I thought the moment I graduated college, I would be a psychologist. So to be clear, that was my understanding, because I don't know. And it was my first semester at college that I learned that wasn't the case. But then that just gave me my next step. and the next step after that. So it took a lot of confidence, but I'll pause there because
No, because what it really helped me. So when we first spoke, you talked about how little Lisette really wanted to do what?
help people.
Right?
Or yeah.
Yes. And so you just manifested in your life, not knowingly, because like I'm a believer that I think that a lot of children inadvertently have wonderful ideas about their life. They have wonderful foresight. They just need people who to give them safe spaces and or somebody to see them, not just as a child or a placeholder, but as a person, and keep just bumper car them towards the place that helps them see. And I believe that, like you said before, the skill set that you built that you didn't know was skill sets, because we don't always know that, right? We know we're loved sometimes, but we know we're loved for the most part. But it's like, hey, why can't I do what they're doing? Why can't I relax and chill and hang out, right? Why am I always here? But you don't know what your ancestors have set up for you in the future. So we're kind of riding those waves. And I think for me, that was just a wonderful kind of pivot into us talking about, which I did more research on because I just really loved it. Instead of it being imposter syndrome, we were calling it imposter phenomenon, because you really changed my mindset on that. I was like, you're so right. It's not a symptom. It's an event that's happening, and let's look at it that way. So can you talk to us about that?
Yes. And so with specializing with first gens, what I mentioned was confidence is a big challenge, and people don't feel as confident because they don't realize how much confidence it takes to trailblaze. You just have connected it so much to survival. So yes, you needed it to survive, but you are a very confident person. Like anyone out here who's the first person to do anything, if you're translating for your parents, it takes confidence to do that. That is terrifying. And you, like, to be clear, doing things confidently does not mean doing things without fear. Like most of the spaces that I enter, that people are like, oh, you're so confident. I'm like, yeah, but I was terrified when I sent that email. I was so scared when my voice was shaking when I first started sharing. But the confidence is, again, not without fear. It's just taking that risk and taking that leap and betting on yourself. But oftentimes we don't do that because, again, we enter spaces, we don't see ourselves in them. And instead of questioning the system, we question ourselves. And that's where imposter syndrome, that term, came from, because then you hear this term and then that explains that there is something wrong with me. Imposter syndrome is the belief that you are a fraud, that you, no matter how hard you work, that everything that you've gained is from luck, and that at any point someone will discover you as a fraud. And when we think about it as a syndrome, the belief is because there's something wrong with you. But the proper term, and how it was developed in 1978, it was as imposter phenomenon, which is a reaction to the environment. What you are feeling, that's real. The emotions, the doubt, but you are not experiencing because there's something wrong with you. You're experiencing that because, again, you're walking into a room, you look at the pictures of the past presidents, or you look at everyone who's like a leadership position, and no one looks like you. Maybe everyone has families who have gone to college, who have worked somewhere like that before, and here you are on your own, needing to figure it all out.
I know. I love that. And so let's talk about how the cultural competency. I'm always trying to make sure that we bring in mental health terms and we add in the cultural competency of the environment, right? Because as a Latina, you have certain things in your culture that are acceptable or not acceptable. Same thing in Black cultures, acceptable and not acceptable. And when we're stepping into spaces, when we're experiencing the imposter syndrome, we have to, as people, take a moment and look at your situation. Well, we usually just say, read the room, right? Read the room. Realize that you belong in the room because you're there. That's the first thing that you need to understand. The reason why you're in the room is because you belong in the room. Now, secondly, you worked hard to get in this room. I'm 100% sure, and sometimes you worked even harder to get in the room because a lot of us minority families, we truly believe that you have to do 10 times as much just to knock on the door. Like that, be very honest. But can we talk about how imposter phenomenon shifts when it comes to people of color and how we look at success and the
Yeah.
psychology behind that?
Yes. So I love that question. So let me talk about how imposter phenomenon impacts people. So like you feel these emotions where you feel, again, I'm a fraud, maybe I don't belong, I don't feel like I'm enough. But it can also lead for you to experience anxiety symptoms. So you're suddenly feeling all of this anxiety around being discovered. So then you engage in other behaviors to manage that anxiety. So you might overwork yourself. You might, try to be perfect all the time, not ask for help. And then that can lead to even some depression symptoms where you're so overwhelmed by everything that you maybe start to self-isolate, or you're finding yourself just crying for no reason because you're overwhelmed. And the third kind of most common experience that I see for folks, you see again, anxious or maybe a little bit sad, but the one that really, I think for me, feels like the most intense one, or the one that is the most detrimental to not your current but future mental health, is I'm blanking on the word right now. It's underperformance. The term is underperformance. So because you firmly believe that you're not good enough and you're questioning yourself all the time, you're feeling overwhelmed by it, you don't actually apply for or go for that promotion, that scholarship, that university, whatever it might be that you want, and you self-select out of your own success.
You know what? Chills, because I know that all too well. Just even on a personal level, I always try to make sure that I use I statements. It's the one thing that I loved about therapy was I statements. It was insane because you don't realize how much you radiate insecurities when you're using you versus when you really have to take responsibility for yourself. And I love that because I think a lot of us, we really talk ourselves out of, and we sell ourselves. We're like the best salesman, negative salesmen to ourselves. I can't do that. I don't belong there. I would never make it there. It's not going to work for me. Instead of applying and letting the rejection happen, or the success happening, which usually happens more than not. And then then you have to admit to yourself, oh, I'm the problem. And we don't like that. We really don't like that.
No, but you have to be real with yourself. You have to have self-awareness, and sometimes realizing like, wow, I've been the one holding myself back. As hard as that is to admit, it is liberating, because then you're like, if I'm the only one doing me, then then there's unlimited options for what I can try. I could try whatever I want, right? Within reason. Know that when I'm saying this, I'm thinking about, like towards a goal and a dream that you have. And so, chasing that dream. So there are behaviors that we may engage in that reinforce this experience that are culturally ingrained. So I'm going to speak to the behaviors and I'll talk about how they can be cultural, right? So one is this, so these are subtypes that were developed by Dr. Valerie Young, but I'm going to share the cultural parts that I talk about in my speaking engagements. So it's her framework, but I'm adding my like cultural insights. So she has 5 subtypes. So the first one, for example, is the perfectionist. And so this is a person who believes that everything needs to be perfect all the time. Otherwise, that is when they're discovered as a fraud. That's when they are a failure. Now, most people might look at it and they're like, yeah, I'm not supposed to be perfect when I go to work. Like we're all learning, we're all growing. But when you grew up translating important documents for your parents, handling, like doctor appointments, scheduling things, mistakes were actually life-threatening. They
Mhm.
were problematic. It was scary to make a mistake. And so that's one part of it. Two, when you are part of a culture, and this we can experience, that's just not just like Latina culture, but anyone who is a minority, who's marginalized, you know that people may look at you differently, how you show up, how you take up space. So it's this fear, well, if I don't show up perfect, well, is my life in danger? Quite literally, is my life
Yeah.
in danger for some
Mhm.
people? So it is a survival mechanism, a way of thinking about it, right? So if I'm not perfect, then I could die. My mom could die. Like something could happen because I messed up on some paperwork or because I went into a space where I was unwelcome
Mhm.
and show
Mhm.
up the right way. So that's where that perfection comes in from for many people. And so you have to recognize that in the workplace, I get it. Maybe at some point in your life, there was a pressure to be perfect to survive in the workplace. Yes, absolutely do your best, but you can't place the expectation of perfection because what happens when perfection is actually a form of self-sabotage. Because
Mhm.
when everything needs to be perfect all the time, then we go back to the underperformance of I never submitted my request for a promotion because I wasn't ready with a statement that I like my statement didn't feel perfect.
Yes.
Whatever. So perfection. The second one I want to talk about is the soloist. So the soloist is a person who needs to do everything by themselves. So culturally, like remember I talked about myself being the firstborn, eldest daughter,
Mm.
learned pretty quickly that I was there to help other people, but they didn't have a lot of energy or capacity to help me.
Yes.
Right. So then I did it by myself and I became hyper independent. So even when someone offered help, I'd say no. And what does that do? That creates a belief in yourself that one, that you're the only person who can do it, that you have to do it alone, and that if you accept help from someone else, then you are not worthy, that you are a fraud.
Mhm.
The soloist. All right, so we have the perfectionist, the soloist, then we have the natural genius. So the natural genius is a person who maybe learns everything or learns a lot very easily, very quickly. And again, we're thinking about it back to survival.
Yes.
Take in information and understand and process it quickly so that then you can make quick decisions, again, for your family's survival. And you were good at it. You're probably praised constantly of you're so smart, you always get it right. Thank you so much for your help. Right. And so you're hearing this often as a child. And then as an adult, it gets harder. Things get harder. Things take a little longer to understand. It doesn't mean that you aren't able to, but they just take a little longer. But the person who's a natural genius is going to be upset and is going to feel like a fraud because it's taking them longer than they're used to. And again, if it had taken them that long when they were younger, could have impacted the survival of their family.
Yes.
Right? We're not going to trend here. It's all about survival. There's all these different cultural kind of nuances there. So we talked about the perfectionist, the soloist, the natural genius. Then there's the super person. So you'll find they're all connected. So that super person or superhuman, that's the person who never says no. They say yes to everything. They say yes to everything at work, right? They say yes to everything at home. Why? Because that's maybe what was expected of them. You were expected to be available to help when you were asked. You're expected to like put everything down. I don't know about you, Lovely, but I have this memory as a little kid, my whole life. It was like, and my brother and I would want to get up and watch cartoons in the morning on the weekend, like kids, like, let's watch cartoons. But the rule was like, you get up and you clean. You have to get up
Yeah.
and you have to clean, and you got to take care of the house, and then you can enjoy yourself.
The
Only
music was playing, but it wasn't for you. The music was not for you.
you can't do it then. You can't do it then. And so then you couldn't say no to anything. You had to say yes to everything that everyone else asked of you. And you had to say no to yourself. Because my need at that point as a kid was to play,
Yes.
but the request was to work. And so then, okay, well, my needs are not important. That was the message that I received.
Mhm.
And as you get older, you've just fallen into this pattern of my needs are not as important. So I will say yes to everyone. And what happens when your plate overfills? Things start to fall off. you forget about, that you were going to go help babysit after work one day because you're so tired. Maybe you fell asleep at work, whatever it might be. And in that moment, that's again when you feel like a fraud or an imposter. But that was self-abandonment instead of, right? We just not saying no to everyone else. And then the last one is the expert. So the expert is a person who never wants to not know the answer to something you ask them. So this is going to be the person who's always looking at new certifications. They're trying to learn, trying to absorb, trying to just know everything about whatever it is. Again, we think back to cultural, like this is also survival strategies, right? Because the more you know, the more informed you are about your rights, for example. And I think that's something that's happening for many people right now.
Absolutely.
You want to know as much as possible because it feels like there's a layer of protection in it. And the reality is, in spaces when you're not needing to focus on your survival, it is not ever expected of you to know everything about whatever your expertise is. I'm a psychologist. I specialize in first-gen mental health. I've given I don't know how many talks on the imposter phenomenon. And my favorite talks that I do is when someone asks me a question that I don't know the answer to, because it reminds me of how much I still need to learn, how much there is to learn about just the imposter phenomenon. And we can have a moment where I'm like, I am an expert. This never takes away my title as an expert. But an expert is someone who knows more than the average person, not someone who knows everything. And it allows me to give that example. So you just want to know more. You want to be informed. So expert really means informed more than the average person, more so than all-knowing, right? So those are the 5 subtypes of the imposter phenomenon, and those are the ways that maybe we reinforce that experience. And again, some of the upbringing or cultural systems that may influence how those show up.
No, and I was saying before, I agree with I'm number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. At some point in my life, I've been all of the above. I'm the oldest daughter and the trailblazer in a lot of spaces, the first of certain things to happen in my family, and took on a lot of the responsibility for the reputation of my family. I think that that's also something that happens a lot when you become I used to be called oh, you're trying to be white, or you're the white girl of the family, which then I'm like, no, I just know how much we need to know in order to get to the next level. And it's not something that can be very complacent. And I think that after a while, after your feelings are hurt, but for so many times, you have to learn how to build boundaries that work well for you. You learn a lot about resilience in that moment, your strengths, the things that you're good at, that you're not good at. And you look at your mental health and your mental wellness in a very different way. Because I think for me, it wasn't, yes, I am African American in some spaces, Black in other spaces, but I'm still the first in my family in a lot of spaces. So learning how to not only represent my mom as this daughter that we've built up, because I was none of those things. I was not the perfect daughter, but the daughter that they built up, but also the sister and the wife and the mom and the good worker and all those titles. And I think when I went to therapy, it really helped me learn how to be more active in my identity as self. That was huge for me. And I think that helped me see what kind of trauma I was doing to myself, but not just for myself, but how I was spreading it and connecting it to my family. And my question for you is, so how do you think the intergenerational trauma is showing up today based off of the imposter phenomenon, or even your L.O.O.P masterclass that you give?
Yeah. And I haven't talked so much about the L.O.O.P method. So let me talk about that first, and then we'll talk about intergenerational trauma. But so when we talk about the imposter experience, it's we feel like we're stuck in some kind of loop, right? Of constantly trying to prove ourselves, constantly trying to prove ourselves to others, prove ourselves to ourselves, our worth, are we enough, whatever it might be. We get stuck in that frame of thinking and we need to find a way out. So to find a way out, then I talk about it as a loop method. I was like, if we're stuck in a loop, how do we use the loop to our advantage, right? Being resourceful. How do you use like what you have? So if we're going to think about it as a loop, then let's think of it as a loop. Let's redefine what a loop means. So the L in loop, so it's an acronym. L in loop is let go of perfection. So you got to start with just letting go of perfection. You want to be realistic with yourself around the goals that you have and embrace the mistakes that happen along the way. You talked earlier about like failures being part of the process. It's so natural to experience failure. And I think especially in this age of social media where everyone's just sharing their wins most of the time, it feels like if when you feel you're the only one.
It's so detrimental to everything. It can feel so intense. Yes.
Exactly. And I've learned personally, I now will share my failures. Like, and what I've learned as a quick tip for anyone listening, just another, like we're letting go of perfection. Something that has helped me is in my inbox, I have a folder that's labeled not yet. So when I get a rejection, something that would be a failure, I put it in my not yet inbox so that it's as a reminder that I have another chance. I can always try.
I love that. I love that. We'll be stealing it. Anyway, go ahead.
Yes, add a not yet folder to your inbox. So let go of perfection. The O is own your wins. So you want to celebrate your small victories, keep a running list of your accomplishments, because our minds, when we're being critical, what do? We just think of all the ways that we're not doing things according to the way we should be. But what we stop doing then is we stop thinking about what we are doing right. And so psychologically, this is something called the confirmation bias, where you start looking for evidence that confirms the belief that you have. You're like, oh, well, here's all the ways that I will not be successful. And then you're like, look, you're this. No, we need to find a way to counteract that. And so it's writing that down. So I actually started that this year. Here, I have it behind me. So I need to fill it up a little bit more, but this is my win jar. So anytime I have a win, I'm like, put it in the jar, because it forces me to pause. At bare minimum, I have a moment of pause where I acknowledge that it is a win for me. I write it down, I put it in the jar. And sometimes people, I say, own your wins, they think they need to celebrate publicly. And culturally, that doesn't feel good forever. So if you want to, please celebrate out loud. I will celebrate you. I'm gonna be the first person to like cheer for anyone, but private celebrations are always nice. So I'll put like my notes, and then you can hear some clinking. I have some stones that people have given me, or things that people give me that's like for good luck or whatever they might be.
I love that. I do little memos to myself, visual memos. Like I'll record a quick video and just be like, this is a diary entry. And because sometimes I want to look back and look myself in the eyes when I was excited to see what that looks like versus, and it doesn't go anywhere. It's just for me, but it's really to see what I look like when I'm excited, because I just need that balance versus when I'm recording myself looking like, I'm about to lose my mind. I'm like, no, we were happy before. Look at the happy.
Yes, I love that. So find your way of owning your wins. I'm like, if you have a group chat with your friends where you all share that all the time.
Oh, that would be good.
Yeah, I had dinner with my cousins the other night, and I ran around the table and I was like, I want everyone to tell me one thing they're celebrating. Whatever it might be. If you're celebrating getting out of bed this morning, whatever it is, we're all celebrating one thing. And that was a special thing to do in community. So letting go of perfection, owning your wins. Now, the second O is open up to support. Okay. Ask for help. Community is not a weakness, it's a strategy. Okay. So ask for help. So wherever you are, know that if you think that you need to be able to do it all on your own, that is a story you have told yourself. In most settings, it is appropriate to ask for clarification, ask for support, and you can go so much further when you find the help that you need. versus trying to do it on your own. Is there anything that helps you with that, Lovely?
Well, one of the things that I've learned is looking outside of your immediate circle. It can be wonderful to have support from the people who are sitting next to you, but having that unbiased, someone who really doesn't know you. I always talk about therapy and counseling, mentoring, coaching. I'm really big into that because I feel like sometimes you need somebody who's not connected to you from birth, who's someone who's not has not been in a house with you forever. Even sister circles that are outside of your immediate sister circle or your brother circle, whichever one works well for you. But just having places where you can have your feelings validated, where you're seen and heard, but people who are also assertive enough to tell you when something doesn't feel right or something may be off, but you feel comfortable in those exchanges. So that became really big for me, is looking outside of my immediate circle so that sometimes the truth comes out a little it comes out a little broader versus the niche down. You can do it. It's going to be fine. I know I can do it, but tell me where you see the deficiencies so that I can work on those things and really build on the greatness that I have or the potential that I have. So that was like something that was really big for me, just learning how to find other safe spaces and sacred spaces in order to grow.
Yes, yes. And I love that. Yeah, framing, like when I say ask for help and then being specific with yourself of like, well, what kind of help would benefit me the most now? And where can I actually have that? Because I bringing up the people closest to you, what I've learned in my work as a psychologist is that so many of my clients, whatever I share with them, I am often not the first person to tell them whatever feedback I'm giving them, but I am the first person that they are not questioning the motivation behind what I am telling them. Because psychologically, we tend to question the motivation of the people closest to us because we're like, are you telling me this because it's what's best for me or because this will benefit you in some way? And the people in your life, they love you, they care about you. Most of the time, they want what's best for you, but it's hard to trust that sometimes.
It really is, and which is insane. But but I also know that it's also a part of our visual story with the people that we love. Sometimes the advice comes from people that we've seen continue to struggle or people who have done questionable things. So in that's all trust. And when you don't trust where the information is coming from, you start to question it. And then over time you build that skill set or that trait to always question when it's not either the person's fault because everybody has to live their life the way they see fit. So for me, that has always been a little bit of my issue. Like, okay, I see you're telling me to do this in my marriage, but you're not married and you don't seem to be able to keep a man. Please go tell me more. Thank you. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. So you're like, I don't trust you. Like, so that's another layer. You may not trust like that this advice, like the source that it's coming from for whatever reason, whatever it might be, So yeah. So then being really intentional about who are you going to open up yourself to ask for support. And the P, so remember L.O.O.P for loop. So P is practicing self-compassion. So all of this is hard. Learning how to we are shifting a perspective that we've had of ourselves for a very long time. So for a very long time, there's a story that you've told yourself about who you are, what you're capable of. And if that has been suppressed in any way by the imposter phenomenon or by whatever systemic oppressive systems there might be, then that version is actually not accurate. So right now you're working to challenge an inaccurate perception of yourself with an accurate perception of yourself, and it's going to feel different. It might feel cringy in some moments. It might, whatever it might be. So that's when the self-compassion comes in, and it's going to feel different. That's not necessarily bad. I'm not a bad person. I'm just trying something new.
No, I love that. And I talk a lot about, especially on my platform, understanding cognitive dissonance, right? What's actually happening in front of you versus the reality that we have in our head. And I think that a lot of us, especially within our families, and it's not always anyone's fault. You could just grow up in a culture that has nothing, that's what's happening in your house can be a very different culture than what's happening in your community, very different than the culture that's happening within your city or your town. So there's so many different aspects of culture when we're like multi-layering it down, as you spoke of earlier, where you had to have this whole different culture happening within your family, and which is very interesting because you have family from El Salvador, then you have Mexico, so then you got that happening. Then outside of that, those two cultures that you're blending together, you're now blending America, right? And you're trying to stay connected to home when you're out in America, and then you're trying to create a culture for yourself. And I think that happens with so many of us, because if your mom grew up different than your dad, so now you have those two bridges that you have to, gaps that you have to bridge together. And then when you step outside, if your household is ran different than your community, you're trying to figure out how to bridge that gap so that you don't stand out, quote unquote, as to look irregular. And then we spread that into school and sports and language, so I'm always thinking about cognitive dissonance and realizing that plays such a huge part in how we look at things with emotional intelligence and how we look at things with self-reflection and awareness, and realizing that none of this stuff comes easy. All of these come with lessons, huge failures and huge successes. And that your failures are lessons. Look at them that way sometimes. It can feel so devastating when the no happens or when the rejection happens. But how can I improve? Was it really a space for me? Because sometimes we want to participate in things that aren't good for us, and looking at life in that space. So I think that your idea of the loop was so good, because you really are saying, give yourself permission to be human. Give yourself permission, like take the deep breath. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it's uncomfortable, but take the deep breath and you're going to make it.
Yeah. Take the deep breath and you're gonna make it. It is. But I think the hard part is that what it means to be human. That's also a story that we're needing to like shift for people, because for some people, like it's like they have such high expectations for themselves and for others that's where it's hard to have that compassion towards others and ourselves, right? So it's like breaking those pieces apart, and helping people understand, well, what does it mean to be human? And to be human is to be flawed and to be learning and growing all the time, and it's to be open to understanding that the way we do things or we see things may not necessarily be the best way for us at any given time. So getting the support to help us with that shifting. So you had asked me this question, we were talking about this because you were talking about intergenerational trauma earlier. And so I want to just briefly touch on what intergenerational trauma is. And intergenerational trauma is essentially trauma that is passed on from one generation to the next. The trauma can be passed on through behaviors, beliefs, and actually your genetics, right? So we have these three different pathways. Quick example for genetics that I'll give, it's not my area of specialty, but what I can share is that genetically, for example, women, when they are pregnant, and they are going to have a daughter, if they experience significant stress throughout their pregnancy, like really severe stress, think about it. I think of, for example, like my parents, like they're new immigrants to this country. They don't speak a lot of language. They're taking public transportation everywhere in LA. And I don't know about you, but like public transportation, you interact with a lot of different characters, a lot of personalities. Not, I've heard stories from my mom from when she was pregnant with me. And what happens for those little girls is that their genetics get shifted. So they experience puberty earlier. It's like the genetic expression was like, yo, you're gonna need your help sooner, given what this body is experiencing. So that's one genetic way that some kind of trauma is passed down. Significant stress puberty comes earlier, and there's different susceptibility to stress. Sometimes people have a lower threshold for how they react to stressful situations. So that would be genetics. Then you're looking at beliefs, right? Like, what are the beliefs people have about what keeps them safe? Trauma they have around that. So we talk about even therapy. Therapy, people accessing therapy for the first time, it involves them trusting a medical system.
Yeah.
And when we think about what has happened to many people in their countries by their medical systems, like, how trusting can you be of places that aren't actually treating you with the medications that they're telling you they are, that they're not doing the procedures they're actually telling you they're doing? So then that goes through generations of beliefs is we don't trust that. We don't do that. We, like, we got to be careful with that. There's a reason people put money in their mattresses instead of banks for a good time, right? So that's the beliefs, and then the behaviors. So behaviors, often you're seeing how people are coping with their trauma. Sometimes people use escape type of behaviors. So they're drinking, they are maybe sleeping too much, using other substances, whatever it might be, but they're escaping. So then you witness that. And so you're taught, well, that's how I cope. When I have a bad day, I go and I drink, or I go and I binge eat, or I go and I sit and watch TV for hours and just numb myself, right? Whatever that might be. Those are some behaviors. So there's just some quick examples of what intergenerational trauma looks like, because you're learning it from the generation before, and you are you're being impacted in it now, right? Does that make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense. And it's why I always akin when we talk about intergenerational trauma within intergenerational trauma within the Black community, we talk about how trusting the police officers, trusting authority, going through slavery, how the amount of stress that our ancestors were under, even celebration. It was this video that was so impactful to me, and it really helped me see things from a different lens. It was a woman who was saying that if you talk to, she was talking to a white mom who was praising her child, and the mom was like, oh yeah, and he does such a great job. And when you talk to some Black women, they go, oh, he's lazy, he does not, they don't give the praise. They take the praise and then they try to protect. That's intergenerational trauma. They try to lower the standards of the other person, because if you were good back then, you were taken. I can't keep my child safe, but if I make my child just the lowest of the low, I'm trying to keep them safe. But what it does, it says to the child, I can't do this. I'm not good enough. I can't make it. But it's just that struggle of trying to keep your child alive. And I think that for me, when I think about intergenerational trauma, especially now, a lot of it has to do with when I was younger, we didn't have the internet. And so you shouldn't have the internet, versus trying to police the internet for your child, learning how to be more interactive as a parent on the internet so that you can help your child still get to enjoy themselves, but also policing what they're seeing so that you are there to at least explain and or soothe and or take away from. You're critiquing the algorithm yourself. So like for me, that was like really big. That was an eye opener, because you don't even think like that. You just make the assumption that that's just the way it is, when it doesn't have to be. It's not helping us. Why am I doing it if it's not helping us grow?
Yeah, and I think so much for sharing that example. Yeah, so like and I'm sure people listening in can think of that dynamic that happens within their family, where they witness, like, it's because things were always done this way. And there's so much more within that can be a whole podcast episode.
Absolutely.
Especially if we go through, break down the values we all have, because you see it in the values. That's part of the beliefs, right? So you see it in there. How you see it impacting people now, right? So like with the imposter phenomenon, I think like the example you just gave is so powerful, because the messaging was, you are not good enough, because if we say that you're not good enough, then you're safe. Right? So then you go into places, you're like, I can't shine too bright, because if I shine too bright, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
And so that's one way you might see it kind of play out. And I think something that I want to acknowledge right now, I think as a society, or at least at immigrant society, there's a collective trauma that is happening that's activating some intergenerational trauma beliefs that maybe were buried or that people were starting to finally feel safe, so had let go of. But because there's the attack on immigrants and the kidnapping and human trafficking of immigrants,
Absolutely.
then if you are an immigrant or a child of an immigrant, it puts you on alert. You know, Lovely, my parents are both US citizens. But the other day, my mom calls me. She's like, your dad is at home, but he's not answering his phone. And ICE had been in the neighborhood the other day, so I'm nervous. And I'm like, well, I'll call my dad, but I live an hour away, right? So I call my dad. He doesn't pick up. Location says he's at home, but my mom's like, he's often takes the dog out on a walk. He doesn't take his phone. What if there's this? And she's like very, very worried. I'm like, I'm sure he's fine. We'll call him. We'll check in on him. Because he didn't answer, my mom left work early. She's like, I don't feel well. I need to go home. So
Yeah.
she went home to check on my dad. My dad was at home. He was sleeping. He just had come home from work, had fallen asleep, and hadn't heard his phone. Like nothing big had happened. But because we are experiencing collective trauma as an immigrant community, because there's an increased level of fear,
Mm-hmm.
it's actually not irrational in that moment for my mom to have been worried that something would have happened to my dad. Like I said, they're both citizens, but that doesn't, like, when you're fearing because you're an immigrant yourself, it doesn't actually
It
give.
doesn't negate the fact that you
Yeah.
absolutely are going through, and you are in the midst of the grief cycle, right? Grieving the life that you thought you worked so hard. I came here, I did everything you told me to do,
Yeah.
right? And now not only I'm fearful of my life, but I'm not just fearful of my life, it's every moment. My friends, my children coming into my job, and I don't have the security of I can just show you my ID, because that doesn't mean anything. The vigilante
Yeah.
politics and policies that are happening
Yeah.
it doesn't give two craps about the fact that I have a real legit ID and passport. I'm allowed, when you have
Mhm.
to say that, I'm allowed to be here. I'm allowed to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, but that's just an example of, like, even someone who should feel safe, uh,
Mm-hmm.
is still not feeling safe. Like, she came home and she's like, I'm so nervous because I left work, because could that negatively impact my work
Yep.
situation? 'Cause I'm leaving. Like, but she's making a decision because she's like, I could not focus. I could not do anything. I was so scared that something had happened to your dad, and that's an awful feeling to experience. And, like, I, I sit with it and I'm like, it's such a small example of what so many people are experiencing in their day to day. I know of people who are not leaving their homes. I know people who have left their homes and are living with someone else because home does not feel safe to them. They've stopped working. Observations my clients have made is they're seeing more young children at the grocery store, getting all the groceries for their families because that's what feels safe to do. Our street vendors, you're not seeing them out as much as like you would in the past. And there's just a lot of different ways that we're seeing our communities being actively impacted in terms of the how much you're not seeing people.
Yeah.
Are being more and more marginalized as we speak. And the fear is very real. And so I myself get so overwhelmed by it that there's moments where I have to pause how much news
Information you're downloading.
yeah. I sit with it and I'm just like, it's just so sad. And I also don't want to look away because I don't want to be ignorant to any of it, right? So it's a lot of monitoring, like, okay, well, how I want to be informed. And we're on a 24-hour news cycle. There's news nonstop. So how do I do that in a way that's manageable for me, right? So when you're thinking about, again, the trauma, if you're a person who has had the privilege to have access to professional support, like I'm in therapy now, right? I have had a therapist, but because of the work that I do, I see therapy as just a part of like my what do I call it? Sometimes people call it like their board of directors like to function. It's part of my board of
My self-care ritual. It's you in there. We locked
directors.
in together. We together.
It's like I need that because that's what helps me stay grounded, helps me, stay attuned with the coping skills that I need that work. And that's part of the process now is your nervous systems, everyone's nervous systems, at least in the immigrant community, are being activated right now. And it's about learning, well, how do I cope? How do I manage? How do I hold space for the fact that I am afraid? There are things to be afraid of. And I need to be able to regulate in a healthy way. And what does that look like for me? So for me, it looks like a workout every morning and managing my news consumption because I'm having conversations about this every single day with my clients, right? So I'm like, it feels very real, or it is real, but I'm like, it feels extra tangible for me and every day. And so finding the ways to do that. And some days I have more energy than others to do things. And so that's when the self-compassion comes in and trying to like hold space for all of it because now more than ever, it's still important to hold on to our joy because joy is also an act of resistance, right? Because the systems want to keep us in fear. So I try to actively find joy in my days, as hard as that may feel at times.
And I think that in marginalized communities, we specialize in joy because joy happens even in the darkest of times. And I feel like, and it shouldn't have to be this way, but we are very resilient. And I look at it from everything from cooking to cultural customs to the way we dress to how we've learned how to do so much with so very little. And it even when you feel like you have so much, you have the house and the car and the taxes and the job and all the things, for the simple fact that your mom still has to think to herself, oh my God, did they take my husband?
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like that's one of the things, even within my culture, my husband is Black, my son is Black, right? And they don't travel in the city, but they have work to do. And will they come home tonight? It used to be such a huge stress. It's still the same stress, but I think, going to therapy and kind of like, just trying to trust God in faith and really hold on to that. But it's still times when you're like, I called and you didn't answer the 2 times I called, and the panic that automatically spikes where now you can't calm down. Like you hit a place where calming down it's like you need a nap and you need a home cooked meal and somebody to hug you. You need to cry it out.
Yeah. You're a therapist. No.
But with the last time we spoke, we were trying to come up with and I was asking you ways that allies can really step in and help support the immigrant community. Do you have any more suggestions that you would like to add?
No, I think that what I had talked about, I'm trying to remember what I had mentioned before, but just generally, I would say, talk to your local government officials. That's always important. There are a bunch of free resources to like be aware of like your rights so that you can help other people be more aware of their rights. Like again, that's a community effort. No one should be expected to know it all. But if we all have some information, if you witness something, videotaping it, like helping us document that, obviously donating to causes if you can. I think I had sent you some links last time.
I have that.
Those are organizations that I know are actively helping community. Something that I know that there are some smaller organizations that are buying out street vendors so that they don't have to go and sell on the street. So they'll buy out all of their stuff. If you're financially able to do that, I'd say buy out a street vendor or just support them when you see them. And oh, you know what I will say? I don't think I said this last time. If you have children, if you have children in school, and they may have peers who are experiencing significant stress. I know that a lot of young kids will experience bullying because of everything going on. So if you have a kid and your kid is witnessing bullying, like, have a conversation with them around what are the kinds of things that you can do when you're seeing someone be bullied, who you can talk to, what is like being aware of how safe do you feel of your child going to those leaders in their systems too, but like even thinking about like what can they do to discourage some of the bullying, even if it's with one friend or something, right? So like that's hard. I hate that I'm even saying that because this responsibility is always on the adults, not on the kids.
But we have to address the realness of the situation.
Yeah.
And I think that what's happening right now, it's the same thing. If we don't support each other, and it starts so young, kids don't see differences. They just see a friend, and
Yeah.
they're taught the differences as they get older. And who does that? Adults. So
Exactly.
we obviously don't self-regulate well. So let's just,
No, no, but that's it. Your kids get scared, and oftentimes we try to protect them by not telling them anything.
yeah.
But what happens when you don't tell a kid who has a wild imagination what's actually going on? Their imagination is gonna fill in the blanks. We don't want that. In the language that your child is, explain to them sort of what's going on, if like some things might be going on at their school, what they can do, all of that. Yeah, but yeah, there's lots of kids who are sometimes even not showing up at school, or just there's lots of different changes. So I'd say just continue to be aware of what's happening. And obviously, if you are able to attend any of the peaceful protests, because I think that the news did a great job on making those look unsafe. And most of them have been pretty peaceful.
Very peaceful, very peaceful, and sadly enjoyable, because then you get to be on the ground with people who you see that there's not any difference, in that we really want to support each other and help each other get to the next place, and feel safe and be seen and feel heard and understand the law.
Exactly. So find that. But yeah, the resources I had linked had given, I'll send you some more, and just to make sure I sent you the right ones. But like,
You
there's
can
lots
email them to me, because then I'll tag them in our post, so that we have those. But not to negate from what we're talking about, but I really do want to end on, because I'm super excited for you about this potential for you taking the international stage and TED Talks and TEDx. And
Yes.
let's really talk about, on top of the fact that you're about to be publishing something real good, we're not going to talk about it all the way, because we're still waiting for like confirmation. Did we refresh?
Oh, I can check, but I don't. I at this point I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I'll check my email real quick to see if there's anything. Okay, I don't have anything in my email. So
Okay, but let's talk about the international stage and your potential to travel and be able to speak and really just change lives.
Wait, I just Googled it.
Is it on?
It's live. We can talk about it. We can talk about it. We can talk about it. I just had, I mean, this is the first time I get to say this out loud. I just linked it in the chat if you want to be able to see it, but I've just published my first essay with Oprah Daily. It is live right now. Oh my God. I'm so excited. Hold on. I did not hear anything you just said. Whatever.
Don't worry about it. You absolutely are allowed to not hear anything right now. Why being the strong one is a form of self-sabotage. Congratulations, girl. Congratulations.
Oh my God.
I'm gonna cry for you. Trust me. I only put mascara on the bottom. I didn't even put makeup at the bottom.
I'm like seeing it, and like I'm taking it in, and there's like an Oprah ad in the bottom corner. I'm just like, oh my God,
dude.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Oh,
you see, little Lisette, who was trying to save hearts and save people, who decided that she was going to embrace the differences from her childhood with other people's childhood, who helped her family make it to the next step, who decided she was going to help other first gens understand. Published July 21st at 1:30 p.m.
It's right when we started, probably. I didn't see it.
Oh, so excited for you.
Thank you. I mean, I'm so excited for this. So I have such big dreams. And so like this is every time I take a risk, because it was taking a risk to pitch myself to publish in Oprah Daily, and I get a yes. It just reinforces how much in alignment I am with the dream that I have and my sense of purpose in this lifetime. And so, my purpose and what I have always felt since I was a little girl was I've always wanted to help people, and it's part of empowerment, but I think it goes beyond that because it's empowerment and action and just belief, like truly restructuring the way that we think about things so that we can see what we're truly capable of beyond like, oh, motivating you to do it once. It's motivating you to change how you view yourself, how you view the systems that you're interacting with. And in my heart and my passion is often with the folks who have been the most marginalized in the society. So I've started with first gen, but really the message is that or the challenges that first gen experience are not unique to first gens. Everyone has these experiences at some point. They're just more common in anyone who has a marginalized identity. And so that's what I want to continue to speak on. That's the narrative that I want to shift. The TED Talk that I want to give is about our innate strengths, whether it's through our bicultural identity or this first gen identity. I have goals to apply that I've learned with the TED process, the TEDx process. It's like it takes a long time. It takes months from when you apply to like actually getting it. So my goal is to apply by the end of this year and have one accepted early into next year for TED Talks. But you know, just to like summarize, I'm a psychologist, I'm a speaker, and I'm a writer. And this year, my goal has been to grow my pillar of public speaking, but they're all interconnected. When I grow as a writer, that helps me grow as a speaker, and to take up space because, believe it or not, public speaking is not the most diverse industry.
You don't say. You don't say.
And here I am again, where I'm like, well, I've done this. I did this. I first and family graduate high school. Like there are PhDs. There's like 1% of the population has PhDs. Of that 1%, there's such a tiny percentage of people who are BIPOC within that, Latina within that. And so for me, it's so special because when I know that when I make my dream come true, it helps some other person see how possible their dream is. And so then they chase that dream too. And then with public speaking, I have found that in therapy and writing, it's all about helping people really find their voice and take up space. And the best way to tell people how to do that is to show people and to just
absolutely.
And and that's what we're doing. We're making big impact. But yeah, my brain very much is like, I can't believe it's live.
It's live. And you know what? And you just spoke on, just to wrap us up, you just spoke on the reason why I started my podcast. I wanted to see people who looked like me talking about the things that affect and that are my community, but that celebrates women as a whole. We as women change everything. We are the hearts of everything. And when you take us out of the picture, things don't get done. They don't get done. So being the first gen, being the first speaker, being the first Latina, whatever that means, being the first Black woman, being the first white, Black, Asian, whatever it is. But if you are doing it so that you can uplift and better other people and you can show them what it looks like, even when you fail, you're doing God's work. Like it can't get any better than that. So we're going to wrap it up on here because I would be calling my mama, my cousin. They'd be like, ma'am, why are you screaming?
I'm like, I'm sorry to call everyone, but I'm like, I'm also feeling it in my body, right? Like I'm feeling the,
and you'll be able to go back in this video that you wouldn't have had, and you get to see your first reaction. We don't get to see that often.
No, we don't. Because I would have just looked at it. And then be like, oh my God.
You get to see yourself like pause and be like, no way. No way.
I still don't believe it. It's there. Okay.
Yeah. There. Look, and it's gonna be there forever. You made your mark. Like it's gonna be there forever. So thank you so much for being a part of this podcast. We hope to talk to you again soon. I just adore you so much, and congratulations on everything.
Thank you so much, Lovely. I'm so honored. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you found some healing, connection, and joy. Until next time, bye, loves.